I pushed the front door open and stepped into what looked like a frat house explosion. Bass shook the walls. The air smelled like cheap perfume, weed, and spilled vodka. Women in lace and lingerie laughed over red cups. Half-dressed men lounged on my leather couch like they owned the place. One guy in a silk robe had his hand down a girl's thong, my throw blanket draped over both of them. I should have gone back to the hotel when my flight got canceled. But I missed her. I missed my wife. That was before I saw her. On the couch. On someone else's lap. My wife, Madison. Wearing the silk nightgown I got her last anniversary. Straddling some guy who looked like he couldn't spell loyalty if it were tattooed on his chest. His hands were on her hips. Her head tilted back in laughter. Like she hadn't a care in the damn world. Like she didn't have a husband who paid for that roof, who loved her stupidly. She didn't notice me at first. Nobody did. Until I walked in deeper, past a couple making out near the stairs, and stood in the center of the living room like the eye of a storm. Someone lowered the music. Conversations hushed. The smell of betrayal settled thick in my throat. Madison's gaze finally snapped to me. Her smile faded. Guilt? No, not even close. She rolled her eyes. Oh, you're home early, she said, as if I had walked in while she was folding laundry. The guy under her raised an eyebrow and smirked. I clocked his jacket tossed lazily over the bar stool. I didn't yell, didn't lunge, didn't cry. I walked to his jacket, slipped my hand inside the inner pocket, and planted something small, a baggie, filled with white powder. Then I took out my phone. Calm, precise, dialed 911. Yes, I'd like to report a drug dealer at my address, I said, giving them the location like I was ordering a pizza. He's here now. Has a suspicious package on him. Seems dangerous. I hung up. All eyes were on me now. I turned slowly, walked toward the couch. Toward her. Madison stood up, adjusting her nightgown like it mattered now. Her lover shifted, unsure of what just happened. I stared at her. The woman I once proposed to with tears in my eyes. The woman who said, "You're my forever," before shoving her tongue down someone else's throat. You have 10 seconds, I said quietly, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. 10 seconds to get out of my house before the cops get here. You. Him. All of you. Her jaw dropped. Are you kidding me right now? You're calling the cops? You're being dramatic. 7 seconds. Ethan, don't do this in front of everyone. 5. God, you're such a psycho. 3. She grabbed her phone, turned to the others. Party's over. Everyone out, she barked. She didn't even look at me. Just panic in her voice now, not regret. The guy scrambled, grabbed his jacket, which now had a special surprise, and ran with the others. Girls picked up heels and stumbled out. Some guy tried to take the rest of my whiskey. I smacked it out of his hand. In less than a minute, the living room was trashed and empty. Except her. And me. I stood there, heart punching my ribs. Every ounce of love I had for her boiling into acid. She looked at me like I was the bad guy. Like I had overreacted to seeing my wife grinding on a stranger in our home during a house party she never told me about. You really set him up? She hissed. That's criminal. I stepped closer. So is inviting a damn orgy into my house while your husband's out of town. She scoffed. It was just fun. Nothing happened. Not what you think. You're blowing it up like always. Liar. Serial grade. And I was just getting started. Madison stood in the middle of the destroyed living room, arms crossed like she was the victim here. Like I had crashed her birthday party, not a full-on lingerie-fueled betrayal in my own damn house. You're making this a bigger deal than it is, she repeated, her voice shrill, defensive. It was just a few friends. Friends. I barked. Since when do your friends grind on you half-naked in my living room? She took a step back. I was drunk. I didn't even realize I was on his lap, she said, eyes darting, mouth twitching. It wasn't like that. You know I'd never do anything to hurt you. That last line. I'd never do anything to hurt you. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. You lied. You threw a party behind my back. You invited strangers into this house. And you were all over that guy like you forgot you had a husband. But yeah, totally not hurting me. She rolled her eyes and turned away like she couldn't even look at me. You're always so dramatic. Like you're perfect? Maybe if you were around more. There it is, I said. The classic deflection. What do you expect? You're always working, Ethan. Gone for days. You think that doesn't take a toll? No. I think loyalty still means something. Even when I'm on a business trip. Silence stretched. She bit her lip, annoyed, like I was giving her a pop quiz she hadn't studied for. I didn't sleep with him, she muttered. Didn't ask. I already know enough. But I didn't. I looked at her hard. The silk nightgown clung to her curves, barely covering anything. Her hair was a mess. Her lipstick smudged. So I imagined you sitting on his lap? I asked. Was I hallucinating the part where he had both hands on your thighs while you giggled like a damn teenager? She sighed. You're twisting everything. No, Madison. You twisted everything. You took what we had and stomped on it like it was disposable. She suddenly laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You know what's really crazy? She said, pacing. That you're acting like some saint. Like you've never messed up. Like you're not cold and distant half the time. You're so busy being the provider. You forgot how to be a husband. That's how you justify this? Throwing a party, getting drunk, draping yourself over some loser, while I'm away working my ass off to pay for this place. You're not a saint, Ethan. You just hide your problems behind your spreadsheets and meetings. I shook my head slowly. Keep going. Maybe if you talk long enough, you'll convince yourself that I'm the one who cheated. That shut her up. Finally. But only for a second. Then she looked at me with that smug little smirk she always used when she wanted to win an argument she was clearly losing. Maybe I just got tired of waiting for you to act like a man, she whispered. That did it. I stepped forward, close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet my eyes. I acted like a man when I married you. When I trusted you. When I came home to this. And you. I pointed at her. You acted like a damn stray cat in heat. Her mouth dropped open. She tried to slap me, but I caught her wrist midair. I didn't squeeze. Just held it for a second and let it drop. No more lies, I said. You crossed the line. And tonight? That was your last warning. She scoffed again, arms crossed. So what now? You kicking me out? No. You're going to leave on your own. Because in about 2 minutes, the cops are going to show up. And trust me, they're not going to like what they find on your boyfriend. Her eyes widened. You actually did it? Yeah. And guess what, sweetheart? I don't feel even a little guilty. And I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something deep in my bones. She stopped being my wife a long time ago. Madison didn't speak. Her eyes darted to the front window, like she could already hear the sirens coming. And maybe she could. I wouldn't be surprised. Her guilt probably made every shadow outside look like flashing red and blue. She turned back to me, but the arrogance was gone now, replaced with something cold. Calculating. You set him up, she said slowly, voice trembling just enough to pretend to be the victim. You realize what you've done, right? You could ruin someone's life. I let out a bitter laugh. You mean like how you ruined our marriage? She blinked at that. No comeback. No defense. She just stood there, blinking like her processor had glitched. The girl who always had something to say suddenly had nothing. You could go to jail for this, Ethan, she tried again. This isn't a joke. Neither is betrayal. We both heard it at the same time. Sirens. Distant at first, then closer. She stepped back. I'm not getting involved in this. I had nothing to do with it. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't seem like that 10 minutes ago when you were grinding on him like a desperate groupie. Her face twisted with rage. You're AF ****ing child. Better than being a lying snake in silk. She snatched her purse from the counter, muttering, screw this. I'm not staying here to watch you play wannabe gangster. Good, I said. Don't come back. She paused in the doorway, looked over her shoulder like she still had something clever to say. But there was nothing. Just the wreckage she left behind. The front door slammed behind her, leaving me in the silence of our shattered home. I heard the knock a few moments later. Sharp. Precise. When I opened the door, 2 officers were already halfway through their script. Sir, we got a report. I cut them off. The guy just left. Black hoodie, gray sweatpants, duffel bag. He ran out the back. Jacket's on the stool if you want to check it. They exchanged a look, then moved in. I sat on the arm of the couch and watched them search. Watched one of them pull out the baggie I planted like it was radioactive. The other started asking questions. I answered every one of them like a man who had nothing to hide. Because I didn't. Not anymore. The guy, Madison's lover, got picked up a few blocks down. I wouldn't find that out until the next day. All I knew then was the cops left with evidence, and I was left with silence. And my thoughts. I sat alone in the middle of a house that suddenly didn't feel like home. Empty red cups on the table. Lipstick stains on the rim of our wine glasses. A bra slung over the back of my chair. Someone else's damn bra. I ran my hands down my face and tried to breathe. That's when I noticed her phone. Madison had left it behind in the rush. Curious, I picked it up. No password. She always said, "You can check it anytime. I've got nothing to hide." Right. I opened her messages. And there it was. Brandon, eggplant sweat droplets. The same guy she was on the couch with. Their last messages were from earlier that day. Madison, he's out of town. Come over after 8. I'll be in your favorite. Brandon, you better be. I've been craving you since last weekend. Madison, you'll get dessert before dinner, baby. I locked the phone. Sat back. Stared at the ceiling. She wasn't sorry. Not even a little. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. An entire secret life behind my back. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was furious. But more than anything, I was focused. If she thought that was the end of it, she had no idea what was coming next. The silence after the storm is always the loudest. I sat in the wreck of our living room, her phone still in my hand. Everything around me reeked of betrayal. Cheap perfume, sweat, spilled booze. Even the shadows in the corners of the room felt like they were laughing at me. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. I was thinking. Clearly. Sharply. Coldly. I'd always been the guy who played by the rules. The one who gave second chances, who tried to talk things through, who believed that love was something worth protecting. Madison had turned that version of me into a punchline. Now, I was going to become the man she never saw coming. I grabbed her phone again and opened the photo gallery. It was all there. Selfies she'd taken in our bathroom mirror with texts underneath like, "Can't wait to feel you again." Pictures of that Brandon guy shirtless in our bed. Voice notes that sounded like bad softcore audio clips. And videos. Oh, there were videos. I didn't watch most of them. Just needed a few seconds of one clip to know everything I needed to know. I sent a couple files to myself, then deleted the sent folder. She was sloppy. Arrogant. Too sure of herself to ever think she'd get caught. She hadn't even changed her iCloud settings. I had full access to everything. Messages, locations, calendar events. That's when I noticed she had something marked for tomorrow night. Dinner. 8 p.m. at Vino on 3rd. Kissmark. The same place we had our first anniversary dinner. Cute. I stared at that calendar event for a long time. She really had no shame. She was just going to slide out of one man's house and into another's arms like it was nothing. And maybe it was, for her. But for me, it was the beginning of the end. I opened my laptop, logged into our joint bank account, transferred 90% of the money into a separate savings account under my name only. She'd never notice. I'd done all the finances. She only checked the balance when she wanted to shop. I looked through credit card statements. There were charges I didn't recognize: lingerie, hotels, Uber rides at midnight. She had used my money to fund her infidelity. It made my blood boil. But I kept my cool. No rage. Just precision. I printed out screenshots, messages, hotel receipts, the location pings from her phone, all of it. Put them in a neat folder. Labeled it, "For my lawyer." I didn't know yet what my end game was, but I knew this much. I wanted her to regret everything. And I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to dismantle her world the way she tried to dismantle mine. Then came the final piece. The camera. I had bought a cheap security cam a month ago, but never installed it. Just hadn't gotten around to it. But now, I placed it in the corner of the living room, pointing directly at the front door and couch. If she came back here thinking everything had blown over, I wanted to see it. Every lie, every move. Let her hang herself with her own rope. By the time midnight rolled around, I had cleaned up just enough to make the place look cold, untouched. I wasn't sleeping that night anyway. I poured myself a drink, sat in the dark, stared out the window, waiting, and thinking. She thought she was clever, slipping into another man's arms while I was out of town. But Madison forgot one thing. I built this house. I know every corner, every weakness, every crack. She just kicked open a door she'll never be able to close again. Tomorrow, she'd get a message, and her pretty little life would start to burn. The next morning, I didn't wake up. I simply stood up from the chair I'd never really left. The drink was untouched. The silence had become a friend. And outside, the sun rose like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. By 9 a.m., I was already showered, dressed, and calm. That dangerous kind of calm. The kind that comes right before a man does something he can't take back. I placed Madison's phone in a padded envelope with a little note. "Forgot this. You'll need it for your dinner date tonight." I sent it to her office by courier. Made sure it would arrive around noon. Let her wonder how I got it. Let her sweat. While she was at work pretending to be someone else, I was across town, sitting in a quiet office that smelled like legal pads and consequence. The lawyer's name was Melissa Granger. Top tier, no nonsense, and with a reputation for making cheating spouses regret they were ever born. She didn't even blink as I slid the folder across the desk. She opened it, read a few messages, listened to about 10 seconds of the video, just long enough to hear Madison moaning someone else's name in our bed. Then she closed the folder. I can bury her, Melissa said simply. She'll come out of this with a toothbrush and a box of regrets. That's what I want, I replied. But I want her to feel it first. I want her to know it's coming. I want her scared. Melissa smiled. I can work with that. She started the paperwork. I signed without hesitation, and I left her office with one thing: a plan. That evening, I waited. I knew Madison wouldn't come home yet. She'd get her phone back, realize what I'd seen, and probably assume I was just having a meltdown. She never really believed I had it in me to fight back. She was wrong. At exactly 8 p.m., I parked 2 blocks down from Vino on 3rd. From where I sat, I had a perfect view of the entrance. It was a cool night, the kind where the wind carried secrets. At 8:12 p.m., I saw her. Madison stepped out of a black Uber, looking like a walking lion heels. Tight red dress. Hair curled. Her phone already in her hand, probably checking to see if Brandon was inside. He was. I'd made sure of that. What she didn't know was that Brandon had been released from custody earlier that afternoon. The drug charges? Dropped. They couldn't stick without context. He got a slap on the wrist and walked. And I knew exactly where he'd go. He didn't know I was watching. Didn't know I'd slipped a note into his jacket pocket before the cops picked him up. Meet her at Vino on 3rd. She'll be expecting you. Let's not waste this opportunity. Signed it with a fake name. He went, of course. Lust always makes fools of men like him. But I wasn't done. I texted Madison as she walked toward the restaurant. From a burner number. Smile big tonight. I'm watching. Every step you take is one step closer to the end of your lies. She stopped mid-step and looked around like she'd felt a ghost breathe on her neck. Good. Let her panic. Let her wonder which face in the crowd knew everything. Let her feel hunted. She rushed inside. I didn't follow. Didn't need to. I had already set everything in motion. Back home, I uploaded the video, just the audio clip of her voice in bed with Brandon, to a private server. Password protected. Sent the link to her boss, her parents, her closest friend group. No message. No explanation. Just the truth. Let it simmer. Let the walls begin to shake. By midnight, my phone buzzed. 20 missed calls from Madison. 12 from her mom. 3 from her best friend, Lauren, who had once told me, if she ever hurts you, I'll kill her. I poured a drink. This time, I took a sip. Because the storm had only just begun, and I was the one holding the lightning. By the time the sun rose the next day, my phone was already vibrating like it had a pulse. Madison had called 13 more times overnight. 2 voicemails. I didn't listen to either. She followed up with texts, first angry, then confused, then desperate. Madison, what the hell did you send to my boss? Are you out of your mind? Madison, you're ruining my life. Ethan, please call me. Madison, we need to talk. I'm begging you. Please. Not once did she say I'm sorry. That was all I needed to know. She wasn't regretful. She was cornered. She had been exposed, publicly, undeniably. Her curated little life had taken a direct hit, and now she was scrambling to put out fires with gasoline. I made coffee, ate a quiet breakfast, put on a clean shirt, and sat on the couch like a man waiting for a storm to knock on his door. At 10:03 a.m., it did. The knock was sharp, impatient. I knew it was her before I even opened the door. Madison stood there looking like a mess. Hair tied up in a knot, sunglasses hiding her face. Wearing one of my old hoodies like that would make me feel nostalgic or something. I need to talk to you, she said. I stepped aside. She walked in like the floor might explode beneath her. The second the door shut, she spun around and ripped off her glasses. Her eyes were red and puffy, crying or faking. I didn't care. What the hell is going on, Ethan? She snapped. You tell me. Why did you send that video to my boss? To my parents? What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I said, chuckling. That's rich coming from a woman who threw a party behind my back and used our bed like it was a motel mattress. She flinched at that, but I wasn't done. You humiliated me. Lied to my face. Let some clown put his hands all over you while you were wearing the robe I bought you. I told you. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Oh, but it did go far, I snapped. It went way past far. I've got the videos. The messages. Your calendar, your cloud, everything. Don't insult me by pretending it was just a moment. She looked like she wanted to scream. Or maybe slap me again. I lost my job this morning, she said, voice cracking. Good. She blinked. My mom won't answer my calls. My dad told me not to come to the house. Lauren sent me a message saying I disgust her. And she just stared. I didn't cheat on you for months, she whispered. It wasn't like that. I got carried away. I was lonely. You were gone all the time. There it was again. The excuse. You know what's sad, Madison? I said, walking closer. You didn't cry for our marriage. You didn't cry when I saw you on another man's lap. You're crying because you lost your job. Because your parents won't talk to you. Because you've been exposed. I made mistakes. No, you made decisions. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. I want to fix this, she said softly, placing a hand on my chest. I still love you. I looked down at her fingers. The same fingers that sent texts to Brandon calling him Daddy. I stepped back. You're not sorry, Madison. You're just sorry everyone found out. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. We're done. I filed for divorce. You'll be served this week. No, Ethan, you can keep the jewelry, the clothes. I don't care. But this house, the one you disrespected, I'll burn it down before I let you walk through it again. Her lip trembled. Please don't do this. You already did. She stood there for a moment, then turned and walked out, shoulders shaking. I didn't stop her, didn't watch her go, didn't even close the door right away. I just stared at the wreckage she left behind, still echoing in the silence. But for the first time in weeks, I felt free. 2 days passed. No calls, no texts, just silence from Madison. But I knew her too well. She wasn't done. Not yet. A woman like her doesn't just fade quietly into the shadows after being exposed. She regroups. She waits. She plans her next move. And I was ready for it. The legal paperwork had been sent. Served through a private courier who told me she looked surprisingly calm when she signed for it. I wasn't surprised. She was probably already thinking of how to twist it, spin it, cry her way into sympathy. She'd post something vague on social media soon. Something like, people change. Sometimes pain teaches us who we really are. Just enough for her friends to flood her inbox with fake concern. What she didn't expect was what I did next. I took her entire betrayal, everything, messages, receipts, hotel bookings, private photos, and I didn't make them public. I made them strategic. I sent a package to the board of her company's new job interview, the one she had lined up after her current boss fired her. Included a polite cover letter, character reference material you may wish to consider. I knew someone on that board. A favor from college. One email, and I made sure she didn't walk into another position like nothing happened. She wanted to burn down what we had. Fine. But I was going to make sure the ashes stuck to her skin. Then I visited the one person I had avoided since this all began, my mother. I hadn't told her the full story. She loved Madison. Thought she was perfect. Classy. Intelligent. Loyal. She used that word a lot. When I sat down with her and slid the folder across the table, her hands trembled as she read. Page after page. Screenshot after screenshot. By the time she reached the voice note, where Madison whispered filth into Brandon's ear while in our bedroom, my mom just shook her head. I raised you to be a good man, she said. She didn't deserve you. I nodded. I know that now. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. So what's next? That was the question. What comes after the storm? I didn't want revenge anymore. Not the way I did in the beginning. I wanted closure. And I wanted her out of my life for good. Madison didn't wait long. That night, she showed up again, this time not crying. Not desperate. She came dressed like she was attending a funeral. Black dress. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. Can we talk? She asked, almost too gently. I didn't say a word. Just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looked around the living room like it was a museum of her own destruction. I read the papers, she said, sitting on the edge of the couch. I guess this is real. It was real the second you betrayed me. She nodded, like she expected that. I've lost everything, she whispered. My job, my friends, my parents barely speak to me. That's what happens when the truth shows up. She looked up at me, tears brimming. I don't want money, she said. I'm not going to fight the divorce. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Not for being caught. For what I did. For who I became. I raised an eyebrow. Too little. Way too late. I'm not the same person anymore, she continued. I don't even recognize the woman I was. You recognized her just fine when you were climbing into hotel beds. She winced. I deserve that. I nodded. You do. Silence. Then she stood. I'll sign everything. No lawyers. No fights. I just want to disappear. I walked to the door and opened it. Then start now. She hesitated, like she wanted to hug me or say something poetic. But there was nothing left between us except ruined trust and paperwork. She stepped outside. I closed the door before she reached the sidewalk. I didn't watch her leave this time. I didn't need to. Because this time, she was never coming back. 2 weeks later, her name was gone from the mailbox. I stood in front of it for a moment, key in hand, just staring at that little empty slot where the sticker used to say Ethan and Madison. It was just mine now. Just me. No joint bills. No shared calendar reminders. No hairbands tangled in the sink. No lies whispered through a smile. It felt cleaner. It felt earned. Inside the house, it was quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't suffocate you but holds you steady. I donated most of the things she left behind. Burned the bedsheets. Repainted the bedroom walls. Not because I was trying to forget. Because I wanted to reclaim it. This was my home again. Not a stage for her betrayal. A few friends knew what had happened. The real ones. Not the performative types who disappear when things get messy. And they asked me the same thing over and over. How did you stay so calm? Truth is, I didn't. Not in the beginning. That first night, I was a wreck. I wanted to scream, punch walls, cry, collapse, rewind time. I replayed every moment like a sick movie. Our wedding, her laugh, the vacations, her hand in mine. All poison now. But I didn't let the chaos win. I let it fuel me instead. Because if I'd let myself spiral, she would have won twice. So I stood up, cleaned the mess, and built my revenge not from hatred, but from clarity. I didn't want to hurt her as much as I wanted her to feel what I felt. Powerless. Exposed. Alone. And now that she did, I didn't feel joy. I felt done. The papers were signed. Divorce finalized. She didn't ask for alimony. Didn't even try to fight for anything. She just vanished into the quiet, like a thief retreating in the dark once the alarm goes off. But before she left town, before she disappeared completely, she sent me one last message. Madison, I don't expect forgiveness. But I do hope one day you find someone who'll love you the way you deserve to be loved by me. And I hope I never forget the man I threw away. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't reply, because the version of her that sent that message, that was the ghost of the woman I once loved. Not the selfish, reckless one who destroyed us. And ghosts don't deserve answers. They deserve peace. But peace is earned. I've been rebuilding, quietly. I started running again in the mornings, cleared my schedule in the evenings. Spent time with people who never betrayed me. I'm not rushing into anything. I don't need a replacement for what I lost. I need to rebuild who I was before her. And better yet, who I am now, without her. You never walk out of betrayal the same. Something always breaks. But if you're smart and strong and just patient enough, you rebuild that broken piece with steel. So yeah, I got hurt, but I didn't stay broken. And if you're reading this, if you've been through what I've been through, or you're standing at the edge of something crumbling, here's my advice. Don't react. Respond. Don't scream. Strategize. Don't beg. Walk away. And whatever you do, never let someone make you feel like your love was the mistake. Their betrayal says everything about them. And how you rise after, that says everything about you. As for me, I'm not bitter. I'm better. And the next time I give my heart to someone, they'll have to earn it in a way she never could. This was my story, not hers.